Pay attention to this map. We're going to be referring back to it throughout the video because the price cuts are coming, everyone. They're just not going to come everywhere at once. They're going to come in certain parts of the country first. And so I think a lot of you are noticing right now, if you look at the mainstream housing market narrative, that it's shifting. If you look at a lot of mainstream outlets who report on the housing market, they are now acknowledging in April 2022 that we are in a housing bubble. They're acknowledging that we're in a housing bubble. If you look at Business Insider and CNBC, and even big YouTubers like Meet Kevin are finally starting to acknowledge this. And so, obviously this is something I've been telling you on this channel for the last 6 to 12 months, but now that the mainstream is finally waking up and realizing that we're in a major housing bubble, the bubble is about to burst, but specifically in certain markets. And no doubt higher mortgage rates is one of the reasons that's going to spur this bubble bursting. And as we're going to see higher mortgage rates and a bubble burst, you're going to see a couple things happen. You're going to see a couple things happen that you really need to pay attention to. You're not going to see like a crash right away, but the first thing you're going to see is more inventory, more homes available for sale. That will be the first thing that happens over the next couple months in your local housing market, which I'm going to cover in this video. Stick around. I'm going to take your requests in just the next 5 to 10 minutes. So you're going to see inventory go up first. Then you're going to see the number of price cuts go up, which this video is about. The number of reduced priced listings is also going to go up, but only after inventory increases. And then finally, after we get higher inventory and more price cuts, that's then when we get like the full-scale housing crash, when the typical home values and markets start going into negative territory and prices really start going down overall. So it's important you understand this stepping ladder, folks. More inventory, more price cuts, then a housing crash, and we're already in the more inventory stage in certain markets around America right now. Like the areas in blue on this map are places where inventory is up significantly year over year. And as I've talked about before, you can basically like draw a line in the center of America and then look west. And you see a lot of blue, a lot of inventory up in Idaho, a lot of inventory up in Oregon, a lot of inventory up in Northern California. Counties around Sacramento and Stockton have higher inventory. We also have a lot of inventory up in Arizona. And so, some of these areas are already meeting that first test, that first criteria that we need to see. For the housing crash is higher inventory. That means the areas in blue are going to see price cuts next. And how do I know that? Well, take a look at this scatter plot, everyone. We're comparing every county in America on this data from Realtor.com. And we're looking at the change in inventory year over year compared to the change in price cuts year over year. And what do you see? Well, a very positive relationship. The more inventory you get on the housing market, the more price cuts you get on the housing market, with a very robust relationship here. So you guys got to be paying attention to these inventory levels in your market. And I'm going to just start with Idaho. We're looking at Idaho right here specifically. And, we have some northern Idaho counties here near Coeur d'Alene and Sandpoint, but we're gonna zoom in here on southern Idaho, where most of the population in the state is, and you just see a lot of blue in Ada County, which is the main county in Boise, Canyon County, Boise County. We go to southwest or southeast Idaho and Bingham County. We just see inventory is up 40%, 50%, 60% year over year in all of these counties. So, you got to think about this, folks. If inventory is already going up year over year, and before we've even really felt the impact of higher mortgage rates, then these are the areas that are going to crash first. They're going to have the most price cuts soon. We're already seeing it in southern Idaho, and we're going to see it more and more and more over the next couple months throughout Idaho. But to just give you a comparison, to compare it against, let's take a look at Florida, right? This is all of the counties in Florida. And you can see, this map looks very different than the Idaho map. Here's Idaho, lots of blue. Here's Florida, lots of red. And what that signifies is, like, for instance, in Palm Beach County, inventory is down 50% year over year in Palm Beach County. We went from 6,000 listings to 3,000 listings. So we're in the opposite direction here. Rather than inventory being up, 61% like in Boise, we're down 50%. And what that means is, don't expect price cuts and a housing crash in Southeast Florida, in the next couple months, because inventory is just still so low. But maybe if you go to other parts of Florida where we see some more blue, like a Hernando County in northern Tampa, or if we go to the Panhandle, if we go to Pensacola, we can see inventory is starting to go up in Pensacola. Maybe these areas in Florida will start to have more price cuts and a housing crash earlier on than the areas in red, everyone. And, just to get a better perspective, too, of over time what this looks like. Take a look at this graph. We're looking at Miami here, the year-over-year change in inventory in the three main counties in Miami. And we got Palm Beach, we got Broward, and we got Miami-Dade. And we're basically down 50% in inventory in all of these counties. And so you look at this and you're like, all right, we're pretty far away from a housing crash here in Miami. We're not going to have a ton of price cuts in the next couple months. But, if we switch back to Idaho for a second and we go to Boise, woo! All right, you can see how this graph looks so different, right? You can see how the inventory has just been spiking over the last year and how we're in a much different situation. And in just 1 second, everyone, I'm going to take your request and show you how much inventory has gone up in your county or gone down and how close your county is to experiencing price cuts in a housing crash. But right before we get into that, I need to just address the fact that the housing crash more broadly has started, folks. The wheels are set in motion. With mortgage rates going up so much, now they're over 5% for the 30-year fixed. You can see how the mentality in the housing market's changing. I'm looking at all of these real estate investors who post on YouTube, and now they have changed their narrative and their story to say they are selling out of the housing market. A lot of real estate investors are now saying we are selling out of the housing market. We are no longer buying. Something I predicted on this channel about 2 months ago. It is happening now. So make no mistake, the wheels are set in motion on the housing crash. You can see it with how the mainstream is now talking about the housing market as if it's a bubble, as if there's going to be a crash. But like I said a second ago, this is going to start in certain parts of the country first. This is not just going to be, snap of the fingers, a national housing crash. And I would encourage a lot of you who, even if you're in a market like Miami, where it can be a depressing time to go buy a home, I would encourage a lot of you to pay attention to what's going on in these other parts of the country. Because if you see Boise, Idaho, and Sacramento, California, and Bend, Oregon going down, well, okay, that doesn't affect you right away in Miami. But if those markets on the West Coast start going down, it's a matter of time. It's a matter of time, maybe 6 months or 12 months before it starts impacting your housing market. So just pay attention to this data. Even if it's not your city, you're going to want to know what's going on in other parts of the country. And so with that, folks, let's get into some requests, everyone. I want to hear about the markets you're most interested in, everyone. And I have a lot of requests coming through, so just give me 1 second. Portland, Oregon. This is a great market to take a look at, everyone. Portland, Oregon. Here's actually how I'm going to do this, everyone. I'm going to do this by state. So we're going to go by state here. And we're starting with Texas, but I'm going to change this to Oregon so we can zoom on over to Portland. And we're going to get to Texas in 1 second, everyone. So stay tuned if you're in Texas. But let's just zoom to the map here in Oregon. All right. So what do we got going on here? So we can see more broadly in Oregon, we have a lot of blue more broadly. And I encourage you guys to pay attention to this. If you just see a lot of blue, which means inventory up, think blue, more homes on the market, think, okay, this housing market's softening. So if we go to Portland, we can actually see in Multnomah County and Washington County, we still have inventory down about 20% year over year. But if we head out to some of these more rural areas in Portland, actually go to Salem, Oregon, inventory's up. Marion County and Salem, Oregon, inventory's up. And if we keep heading down through southern Portland, we see inventory going up. And so, while we would look at this and say, all right, Portland, Oregon is still tight on inventory. It's going down in certain parts of the metro. If we zoom out on the state, we see lots of blue, which suggests more broadly Oregon is starting to tilt into a crash. Oregon is starting to tilt into a crash, especially if we let's layer on Washington State now. Let's layer on Washington State because we also got, Clark County in Washington. That's part of the Portland metro. Inventory's up 5% year over year. And then if we get into southern Washington, wow, folks, you can see this kind of thick area of blue all throughout the Pacific Northwest. All throughout the Pacific Northwest, we see lots of counties where inventory is up year over year. And this is something you're going to need to watch out for and be careful for if you're buying anywhere in the Pacific Northwest. Because I think this is where the crash starts, in addition to, again, we layer on Idaho here. If we layer on Idaho, more blue, right? And so you're really starting to see the trend. And what if we actually let's add Utah to this as well. Let's add Utah to this as well. And wow, look at this, folks. All the way through southeastern Oregon, down to Idaho, to northwestern Utah, we have lots and lots of blue, lots and lots of higher inventory. Someone's asking in the chat for a link to this map. If you are a member of my channel, which is different from a subscriber, if you're a member and hit the join button and pay $5 a month, you get access to these interactive graphs if you're a channel member specifically. So if you want access to this data, hit the join button below the video. There's also a link in the description. All right, everyone, let's get some more requests. Someone's asking for Montana, everyone. So let's get rid of this and let's go to Montana, everyone. So if we scroll up here, we can see Montana is a place where inventory is still, I would say, down in a lot of different markets. So in Great Falls, it's down. In Billings, we can see it's down. In Yellowstone County, in Carbon County, we can see it's down. So Montana is an area which you still see this red, especially heading to Missoula. So Montana is not as far along in terms of the housing market softening. So I wouldn't expect price cuts right away in some of these areas in Montana in red. And make no mistake, folks, we're going to get to the rest of the U.S. soon, so get your requests ready. But in some of these areas like, Kalispell, Montana, where inventory is up 20% year over year, potentially we could see some price cuts soon, and we're going to be closer to a housing crash there. Now we got a request for Utah, everyone. So let's go down to Utah and see what's going on, because Utah is another state where things are softening in a hurry, everyone. Take a look at this. So we got Utah here, and again, it's a lot of blue, which means more homes on the market today compared to a year ago, which means more price cuts in the next couple months, which means closer to a housing crash when you see blue. The thing that sticks out to me most is Provo. Inventory is up 31% in Provo in Utah County. It's also up 31% in Cache County in Logan, Utah. Also, if you go to Box Elder County in Ogden, it's up 60%. And then also pay attention to this. If we go to southern Utah, we can see in St. George, Utah and Washington County, inventory is up 77% year over year. So this is an area in Utah which, as I've said many times in my 2022 housing market predictions, I think Utah is one of the first states to go down, and you could see why. We have way more inventory today than we did a year ago on the market, according to Realtor.com. And while we're here, let's just take a look at Nevada, everyone, because you could see, you guys can see how this is all linked, right? You just see in this general area of Utah and Nevada and Central Valley, California, it's all blue. Vegas, we're down on inventory by 18%. So Vegas is still tightening to where we were before. But if we go to Northwest Utah, Fernley, Carson City, Reno, we can see inventory starting to go up. And let me just explain to you guys briefly what I think is going on here. why are we seeing so much blue in this area? And then especially like in the Central Valley in California, where we have like Merced and Stockton and Sacramento and Vallejo and Madera and Fresno. Why are we seeing inventory up in these locations? And I'll get to more of your requests in a second, but I think it's saying this. The pandemic exodus out of California has slowed significantly. That's what this data is telling me, because it seems like when you look at this map, it seems like the housing markets that are softening the most are the ones that, got the most people moving in from, exiting San Francisco and LA in say 2020 and 2021. Well, they're no longer moving to these areas in the same way that they were before. Yuba City, California, all of these places are just kind of adding lots of homes on the market. And so this is something that you're really going to have to pay attention to going forward. I think it says that the pandemic exodus from especially coastal California is over. It's over, and we're going to see reduced migration coupled with higher interest and mortgage rates put a lot of pain and stress on these housing markets on the western side of America. All right, everyone, I've spent enough time on the West Coast for now. We're going to start looking more at, let's go to the Southeast so we can see some of the Southeast markets here. We covered Florida a bit earlier. You can see, obviously, Florida inventory is still very low, like Osceola County in Orlando, it's down 50%. Orange County, it's down 40%. And, if you would just kind of go up the coast here, let's just go up the coast and go into Georgia. We can see Savannah inventory way down in Savannah, then into Hilton Head Island, South Carolina, inventory down, then into Charleston, inventory down by 47%. So I think you guys are seeing we had like a geographic cluster on the West Coast and mountain regions that look similar in terms of inventory being up. Well, we have a geographic cluster in the Southeast, especially on the Southeast coast, going all the way basically from like New Bern, North Carolina, Wilmington, North Carolina, down to Florida, where inventory is down. So we are not as close to a housing crash or price cuts in these areas in red on the eastern, southeastern coast of the U.S. So what I would say to you, if you are in Wilmington or Savannah or Myrtle Beach or Charleston or, southeast Florida, these are places where you're going to have to wait a little longer to be able to get a deal. Because the inventory is just so far down from where it was a year ago. So unfortunately, you're going to have to wait a little longer. I don't think it's going to be forever, but maybe another 3 to 6 months before we see inventory start to go up, and then maybe another 3 to 6 months after that before we see price cuts. But what do you all notice here is that if we move inland into Georgia, what do we see here in Georgia, everyone? We're starting to see lots of blues show up in Georgia, which is very interesting. If we go to Fulton County, the main county in Atlanta, inventory is still way down, and we're further away from price cuts in Fulton County. But boy, if we go to like Douglas County or Paulding County or Spalding County or Walton County around Atlanta, we see in a lot of these rural Atlanta counties, inventory is up, which means more homes on the market, which means more price cuts closer to a crash. And you just see really lots of softening in Georgia. And so I think while we haven't seen it hit like the main Atlanta counties yet, the fact that it's happening out here means that it will be happening in the center of Atlanta pretty soon. So I think this is something that surprised me. I wasn't expecting to see Georgia softening so much. And you can see actually, if we continue trekking up to actually Tennessee, we see something similar, where in these rural counties in Tennessee, outside Chattanooga, going up here to Cookeville, we see lots of increases in inventory. Maybe inventory is still down in Knoxville. Maybe inventory is still down in Davidson County and Nashville, but we're seeing more and more come on the market in these rural and suburban counties in Georgia and Tennessee. And I'm going to get into more of your requests in 1 second, but I would encourage all of you to think about this zoomed out a little bit, right? If you see a lot of blue aka higher inventory around your metro or county, even if your county hasn't seen increased inventory yet, seeing geographic concentration of higher inventory nearby is a sign that there's softening going on. It's a sign that there's not as many people moving into the area. It's a sign that more people are leaving the area because, if you're in Atlanta, in Fulton, what happens in Douglas County is going to matter and vice versa. And so let's get some more requests, everyone. We got some more requests here. We got some requests for actually Charlotte, North Carolina. So let's move over to Charlotte here, and we're looking at Mecklenburg County if we're talking Charlotte. And in Mecklenburg County, inventory is down 33% year over year. So still pretty tight situation in Mecklenburg County. Inventory is still down. It's red. If we go to some of the nearby counties like Cabarrus, inventory is up. And then we kind of have this translucent color nearby showing, okay, inventory is flat. So I would say this means that Charlotte's still very tight, especially if you're looking and buying in Mecklenburg County. But again, notice that nearby, in South Carolina and to the northeast in North Carolina, we're starting to see some softening. And so that's a potentially good sign that more stuff is going to be coming on the market in Mecklenburg County soon, given some of the softening that's going on nearby in, Winston-Salem, for instance, is starting to see some more homes on the market. So, something to definitely pay attention to. Now, let's move down to Texas, everyone, because I know a lot of you are interested in Texas. And this is one that we need to spend a decent amount of time on here. So let's actually start with Dallas. Dallas is where I live. I live smack dab in the middle here of Dallas County. And we can see Dallas County is down 39% on inventory year over year. And so, we're going to not expect as many price cuts in Dallas County since inventory is still going down by 39%. And if we go to Collin County, inventory is down by 15%. And Denton County, inventory is down by 29%. So these four big counties, also Tarrant and Fort Worth, we're still down. We're still going down. But, like we saw around Atlanta, if we go to some of these outlying, more rural counties like an Ellis County or a Johnson County or a Navarro County or a Hunt County or a Wise County, we start to see inventory going up. And this is a trend I'm starting to observe across America, is that inventory is softening in those rural locations that really benefited from the pandemic. Well, not as many people are moving to those areas anymore. So we're starting to see more homes on the market. And I think what we're seeing in these rural areas is eventually going to spill over into these more urban areas as well. Let's move down towards Austin, though. So we got Waco in between. Inventory is up in Waco by about 20% year over year. If you watch Chip and Joanna Gaines, you know all about Waco. But now let's move down to Austin, because it's pretty interesting to see what's going on here in Austin. In Travis County, inventory is down 8%. But if we go to Bastrop County to the east, kind of where the Tesla Gigafactory is, inventory is up 65% year over year. If we go to Hayes County to the south, inventory is up 26% year over year. So we have more softening going on in Austin to the eastern and southern counties than we do right in the middle of Travis. Now, let's keep going down to San Antonio, and you could see, tell me if you guys are getting the trend here. It's the same situation. Bexar County down 10%. This is the main county in San Antonio. But then we have Wilson County's up 54%. Bandera County's up 28%. And again, most of these outlying rural counties are up. And if we go to Houston, it's a similar situation. So now we're in Houston. Harris County, inventory's down 24%. But if we go up to Montgomery County, it's basically flat. And then if we go up to Walker County in Huntsville, Texas, inventory is up. We can actually see here Fort Bend and Waller County, inventory is still down year over year. So interestingly, Houston, from an inventory perspective, seems actually like one of the tightest markets that we would be looking at here in Texas right now. So, this is super interesting to understand, everyone, is that we're seeing these kind of local differences in how inventory is trending in different markets. But again, I would encourage you all, pay attention to the clustering of blue. When we just see a clustering of blue, that means that the overall area is softening. Now, let's move back to the southwest. We're going to take a look at Arizona, specifically Phoenix. I know a lot of you are interested in Phoenix, and we have a big-ass county in Phoenix, Maricopa County. Inventory is basically flat. in Maricopa, down 3% year over year. But if we go down to Pinal County to the south, I hope I pronounced that correctly, Pinal County, inventory is up 46% year over year. So if we head further south, kind of like outside of the main area in Phoenix into Pinal County, big increase in inventory. So this is where I would expect to see the softening first. In Phoenix, the most price cuts coming to Pinal County first. And if we actually head down towards Tucson, Pima County, we can see a 14% increase in inventory. So again, more broadly, I would also just encourage you, take a look at all the blue in Arizona. We see lots of blue, which means general softening, more inventory throughout the state. And I think it's only a matter of time before Maricopa starts to see more inventory, that main county in Phoenix. Now, what about Vegas? I know someone just asked about Vegas. I covered it a bit before, but we're down 18% on inventory in Vegas year over year. So this is actually kind of like the one red spot in this sea of blue, meaning that Vegas is still getting tighter. But look at nearby. San Bernardino County in Southern California, inventory is up 28% year over year. So Southern California, Inland Empire, San Bernardino, and Riverside counties, inventory is up. Interestingly, it's down in Orange County near LA. It's down in LA County. It's also down in San Diego. So again, think about what this says about the movement of people, right? We had a big exodus from LA, Orange County, and San Diego County during the pandemic. A lot of people moved to San Bernardino and Riverside. A lot of people also moved to Pinal County and Maricopa County. But now, I think that exodus is slowing, and you're seeing that by the fact that the inventory is reduced in coastal Southern California, but it's going up in the Inland Empire. So, one other place I think this would be really interesting to compare this to is New York. What's going on in New York in the Northeast? Because this is a really interesting market, because we had a big exodus in New York. And so, and by the way, one more time, someone asked just a link to this map. If you want access to this data, become a channel member. Hit the join button below. The cost is $5 a month. There's also a link in the description. I have 1,300 members already on my channel. They get exclusive access to this data in terms of interactive graphs and maps. So if you want access to all of that, hit the join button, become a channel member. But first, let's talk about the Northeast. What's going on here? Boy, you can see lots of red in Connecticut, New Haven, Hartford, Fairfield County, meaning inventory is way down year over year. In these areas in Connecticut, which suggests that potentially there's still an exodus occurring from New York. There might still be an exodus occurring from Manhattan, because we can actually see inventory is up year over year in Manhattan, and it's still down in all of these surrounding places. You can see Dutchess County, it's down by 39%. You can see in Columbia County in upstate New York, inventory is down by 48%. It's a hot market in Columbia County right now. So lots of people still leaving Manhattan and New York, fleeing to parts of Connecticut and upstate New York to do that. I think we see somewhat of a similar situation around Boston, although Suffolk County inventory is down year over year, which means less people leaving, and it's also down in some of the nearby suburban counties like Essex and Middlesex County near Boston. And so get your last request ready, everyone. I'm going to take about 5 more requests before I end the video. But before I do that, I just want to highlight how important it is that you guys pay attention to this data. And the underlying source for this data comes from Realtor.com. They have amazing data on the U.S. housing market. If you want to download some of Realtor.com's data for yourself, I have a link in the description of this video to do that. So after this video post, download some of that data for yourself. And if you don't want to download it yourself, hit the join button, become a channel member. I did it for you. But it's just pay attention to this data, because if you're talking to a realtor, right, or you're trying to get advice from an investor on what to do, a lot of them have their own interests in mind in terms of trying to tell you to buy or not to buy. In the end, you got to make your own decision about whether you should buy right now or not buy right now. No one else can tell you what to do, but I think if you inform yourself and arm yourself with data like this, so you can see the change in inventory, you can get an idea of when the price cuts are coming to your county, you can then make a better decision. That's what this is all about, helping you make a better decision using data like this from Realtor.com. So let's get into the last couple requests, everyone. Let's get into the last couple requests here. What do you guys want to see? All right, Columbus, Ohio. Let's get a little Midwest action here. This is Columbus, Ohio, moving down on the map. I apologize for all this scrolling, everyone. All right, everyone. So here we are in Columbus, middle of Ohio. Here we are, Franklin County. And so for those of you that don't know, some of you know this, I actually lived in Columbus for a year during the pandemic in 2020. I lived in downtown Columbus, liked it a lot. We can see inventory is down in Franklin County by 9%, which is the main county in Columbus. It's also down in Delaware County by 12%. But take a look at this, folks. In these rural areas like Madison and Pickaway County and Perry County and Licking and Knox County and Union County, we're seeing inventory go up. So we saw this in Atlanta, we saw this in Dallas, we saw that, we still had inventory down in the main county, but it was going up in the rural areas, and, go to like Zanesville, it's up 65%. So this is a sign that there's softening occurring, and you're not seeing it yet, if you're going to buy in Dublin or if you're going to buy in Hilliard in Columbus yet, but if you were to go to the rural areas, you are seeing it. And so that is something to be careful of. I think that rural softening is going to spill over soon into the main area here in Columbus. So what other requests do we have? We got Louisville, Kentucky. Let's keep the Midwest action rolling. Although I don't know, guys. Is Louisville in the Midwest or is it in the Southeast? This is a tremendous question that I would love to know the answer to. It seems like kind of like a Midwest town to me. But I think technically being in Kentucky, it's in the Southeast. So we could see in Jefferson County, the main county in Louisville, inventory is down 18%. But again, take a look at this. The surrounding counties' inventory is up year over year. Same trend. Rural counties, inventory is starting to go up. It's still down in the main county, but starting to go up nearby. So be careful if you're buying in Louisville right now. This could be a sign of softening occurring. It means likely more price cuts into the future. Maybe you should wait a couple months to see how that plays out. What about Indianapolis? Let's keep the Midwest train rolling. Indianapolis, this is a place where we see a more legitimate decrease in inventory. Still down 30% in Marion. Still down 27% in Hamilton County, which actually includes some of the nicest suburbs in America. So Indianapolis seems like we're further away from a downturn, but if we just go south a little bit, like Columbus, Indiana, Greensburg, Indiana, we see a lot of softening. So I still think we have some runway on Indianapolis' housing market before we see price cuts, but pay attention to what's going on in some of these southern counties. Someone said, what about Canada? I will cover Canada and more international markets soon. I just got to get more data. So pay attention for maybe a future video on Canada and some other markets like that. What about Kansas City? Let's keep the Midwest train rolling, going to Kansas City. Where are we at here, everyone? I apologize. This map is a little intense. It's a little confusing. All right. If we go, here's St. Louis. Where is Kansas City? Kansas City is over here. All right, everyone. So, Kansas City, half of it's in Kansas, half of it's in Missouri. I don't know if you guys knew that. We have inventory up in Kansas City in most of these counties. So, Jackson County, which is the main Kansas City, Missouri county, inventory is up 13%. It's up 29% in Clay County. It's up 17% in Wyandotte County. So I think we're seeing a lot of softening in the Kansas City market. You can see compared to these other Midwest markets we looked at, this was blue across the board. So don't be surprised if we see price cuts very soon in Kansas City based off these year-over-year inventory increases. What else do we got here? All right, I covered the Midwest enough. So we're going to finish off. Where are we going to finish off, everyone? Let's finish off two places. We're going to finish off first in Colorado, where if we scroll in, we can see year-over-year inventory. So again, very interesting, folks. Year-over-year inventory in Denver County here, which is the main county in Denver, is down 43%. Down in Denver County, but then up in Adams County, slightly down in Arapahoe County, slightly down in Douglas County. but up in Broomfield County. So kind of a mixed bag, but again, it's interesting to see how the mainland Denver County inventory is down, starting to soften in these other areas. Remember, this is year over year. I did a video on Monday looking at month over month, and Denver was up month over month. So we could be seeing more softening in Denver into the future based on the monthly increases, but this is year over year, and it's still showing that Denver is down. And then let's finish things off. Let's finish things off in California, everyone, because I know a lot of you are in California. Let's finish things off in Northern California. San Francisco County, inventory is basically flat year over year. It's down in San Mateo. It's down in Santa Clara. Again, it's up month over month, which I covered in the previous video, but it's down year over year. But then just pay attention to what's going on in the Northern California, Central Valley area. Inventory is up, and all of these areas that people fled during the pandemic suggest that there's going to be some problems heading for these housing markets soon. All right, everyone. That covers it for today. If you enjoyed this video, make sure to smash the like button. That's the best way you can support this channel. And if I did not happen to cover your county, your market in this video, there's something you can do about that. Hit the join button below, become a channel member. I'm actually going to have an exclusive channel member only live stream on Friday. Channel member only live stream on Friday for my 1,300 channel members. If you want to be part of that, hit the join button, become a channel member below. You're going to have a lot more time in these member-only live streams to get your questions answered. So, all right, everyone. I really appreciate you guys taking an interest in this data. As I said before, the housing crash has started. You're seeing the mainstream narrative change significantly on the housing market, but it's going to start in certain parts of the country first, those areas on the West Coast and mountain states, and it looks like rural areas, kind of outside places that people fled to during the pandemic, they are starting to go down first. So something to pay attention to in future months, everyone. All right.